So how do you like to define public history?
We do history in a different way, so the format is different. We do history for people who may not be specialists, they don't know much about history, so we have to be prepared to answer questions in a simple way without simplifying history. So that's an approach, that's also a practice. It's also using history to make it more inclusive, asking people to collaborate, sharing authority, sharing your knowledge, talking with people. So it's not only historians talking to people, working for the public, it's also historians working with the public. And that's a challenge, because usually historians are not ready to share their authority. So it's working for the public, working with the public in this very collaborative practice. So that's how we define public history.
When you say institutions are reluctant to share their knowledge, why do you think that is?
Well, we are trained as historians. We have diplomas, so we have constantly to prove that we are historians. We have this professional methodology, so we're not ready to accept that everyone can be an historian. But everyone can be an historian. Not everyone is an historian. That's the difference. So I think sometimes historians are reluctant to share, and some extent, they're right sometimes. History is not opinion. So we have to be confident in the historical methodology. But we have to be able also to think that we are not missionaries. We are not sending knowledge. We are not giving the truth. We have to collaborate with people who sometimes know more than we do. Amateur historians, they are historians, and they knew a lot, much more than sometimes than academic historians. So we have to be ready to share, to listen, and to collaborate with other historians, with non-historians, with filmmakers, with archivists. So that's the sharing activity that not every historian is ready and willing to do.
So there's a feeling that maybe traditional historians may feel slightly undermined by the concept of public history, the same way traditional journalists might be slightly undermined by blogging and tweeting. And
that's a good question. Yes, there is definitely a power relation. Historians do not want to lose their authority, their position, their specificity,
their monopoly.
It's also a competition to get positions. I mean, the market is very difficult. So if you share history, if everybody can be an historian, that's damaging, and that's also very scary. So some historians tend to feel that we do not want to share because we are special, we have the truth, we know the truth. And that's also this, as you're right, this power relation thing, like we are the traditional, we are the expert. This, the image of the expert in the, public society, in the society, European society as well. This is very important. So historians have to move from this expert feeling to more sharing, collaborative practice.
But you've spent years studying history, undergraduate, postgraduate, as a PhD researcher. Surely your interpretation of history is more valuable than somebody who's doing it as a hobby.
Well,
does that not make you feel slightly?
I know. Yeah, I know what you mean. You have historical methodology, and we don't want to give that up. That's important. We are trained as historians, but it doesn't mean that people who are not historians or trained historians do not have this historical methodology. So everybody can be an historian if he or she does it properly with this historical analysis. So I'm not ready to give up my training. I just want to share my training. So the ideal is to share this historical methodology with people who are not historians. That becomes public history. People do history with historical methodology. So it's not everybody is doing opinion-based history. No, it's a better history for the public.
And what are your favorite examples of public history?
Well, that's I do mostly digital history and museum studies, so I like this crowdsourcing activity when we ask people to help us historians to do history, and especially when you ask people to interpret the past, when you use websites to ask people about what they feel about the past. It becomes history that is hardly heard of usually. So I like this. I don't have a particular project in mind, but I like this practice of crowdsourcing. because the digital technology helps us historians to access people that we would never have access to before the digital age. So the crowdsourcing and digital public history is very, very important, I think.
And you wrote a book about the internationalization of public history. What does that mean?
Well, it's basically, as you know, public history is a term that was born in the US. So for 30 years, it has been heavily controlled and defined by Northern America. Other people do public history, but they're not called public historians. So public history has been done in Europe. Historians have had a public role in the 19th century, 20th century. And the internationalization of public history is to say, basically, listen, you have something in common. You work in a museum in London, you work in the archive in France, you do public history. So we try to provide a space where all those people could say, that's what I do. I have a lot in common with you, working in a different country, a different institution, but we work with public audiences. We have the same challenges, issues. So we try to provide this space where people can meet and say, well, that's what I do. It's also giving them power. Sometimes historians working in museums, they're not recognized as historians because they're not academic historians. But if you give them the option of saying, I'm a public historian, you give them some power because they are something, they are historians. So that's also a challenge for the International Federation of Public History. That's what we want to provide, a space of discussion, an identity, and some power to historians who may not have the support of the academy behind them.
It's about empowering passionate people.
Exactly. It's empowering historians, other people who may not be trained as historians but have this historical methodology. So you give them power. It's more participatory. It's more also democratizing history, being more inclusive, and to be less top-down and more, not only bottom-up, but more participatory. So empowering people and historians, that's very important.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.